Hi, ladies. Welcome to another episode of Enjoying Your Children. We haven't been here for a while. It's good to be back. It's good to have my two guests, Erin and Adina, with me. And today we're just going to go through some topics and just have a lovely discussion on these topics. I just want Erin and Adina to say hello quickly, and then we'll move on and I'll let you know about our wonderful topics for today.
Hello quickly. No, that's just one of those things that they used to say. I just had to do that. I think a lot of people think that I'm terrifying, and that's one of the things when I would meet ladies when I was traveling, which I'm so grateful I'm not traveling, and they would say, "Oh, you're not anything like I imagined." And I said, "Well, what did you imagine?" The first thing was they said, "We thought you were shorter. You're so tall." And I thought that's so funny to me thinking that, because I've never thought of myself as short. And then also funny. That was my other thing. But I don't try to be funny because I'm not funny. It's just, I'm just funny.
It happens.
I think it happens in a big family. It's the only way to survive. I don't know. I have no idea. All my children are funny in a different way. Yeah. And the ones that survive and that marry in, they're funny too. So it's key for our family. Anyway, hello, and I'll turn it over to you, Adina.
Hello, ladies. It's such a pleasure to be back, and I'm so excited for this podcast.
I'm very excited. I've missed our times, weeks off. I just enjoy, and whether anyone listens, I just enjoy getting together with both of you and just talking about my absolute favorite subject is children, but it is enjoying your children. I just don't think parents, mothers enjoy their children. And even though I set out to do it, really enjoyed my children, I still don't think I did it as much, enjoyed them as much as I could have. And so hopefully this is going to do that for you, sharing about them being well fed and well dressed and all these different things. But I think one of the biggest one is in the training. Should we go ahead and jump into that? You mentioned, doing that?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, go ahead. You set the stage.
Sorry. Yes. So definitely there's a topic that's fresh in Erin's mind that we want to share, and that's training your child. And Erin also spoke a little about discipline, and just before we started the podcast, and how it's not necessarily corporal punishment. So I'm going to give over to you, Erin, while everything is still fresh in your mind.
Yes, thank you. So I think the thing is when people think, not just people, mothers, parents, everyone thinks of discipline, it's like it's corporal punishment. It means I'm going to discipline them, something in a harsh behavior, a form of a punishment. But discipline, like if you think of the military or you think of sports, the discipline comes from training them to do what they should do. And it's not just you tell them once. It's doing a discipline is something you have to do over and over, and you perfect and you get better at it. And then it comes down to exactly what he says, train up a child in his way he should go. It is a form of training. It doesn't have to be. It should not have to be discipline. That should be rare, not because you withhold when they deserve it. And if a child isn't trained, isn't well behaved, well, gosh, you want to, discipline. Usually they withhold it until they lose it. And then, then it, borders on what they would consider child abuse, because it's just not being done correctly. And so I think, training a child and helping them to be the best child that they can, and grow to be the best adult. So anyway, I had just an experience just this past week that I wanted to share. And it's also because I had talked to my daughter-in-law. I even talked to my granddaughter, my son, who was all party to this, watching all of this. Because at that point I felt like I could share. But anyway, it was a friend of my son's who came down to visit their family that were in the area south of here. But anyway, we all got together, and it was nice because I know this young man. I've known him since he was back at our mega church, friend of my son's. And so they asked me if I wanted to come along, which I thought, that's wonderful. Okay, that would be nice. So anyway, I invited them over to where I live in my apartment, and they were able to go swimming. But and then being able to treat him to a good meal, because everybody who knows our family knows about the good meals about Grammy, though we never brought her to, well, she is in Missouri, just because that's where we brought her ashes and things. But but nobody met her. They just know her from talking about and a good meal. So I was able to do that. So anyway, and I wanted to say too, I never spoke to this couple or to my son or daughter-in-law or anything. In the evening, we would get together, and I would just listen to the couples talking amongst themselves. And now I'm speaking as a grandmother, and all of you will be grandparents, hopefully, God willing.
Yes.
And something else that I put in my notes is I just listened. I didn't, I didn't participate at all. That was a shock for me because I'm not one to sit quietly, but they were interacting, and they were talking, and they were even talking about problems as parents or raising children and things, but they never turned and asked me. And I realized when I was making my notes, and my husband and I have been talking about this before, but a wise woman doesn't offer unsolicited advice. Isn't that a good quote? That's from him,
Yes.
clearly. But, and then I wrote down that I learned this from my own mother, which is absolutely true, but I actually really learned it from my grandmother, great grandma Brown, who I became my grandmother when I got married. But because she never told me anything until I asked her. She never, and I never felt judged or anything. But I remember the first time when I asked her something like, well, Grandma, can you show me how to make good coffee, or something about coffee? And she says, well, the first thing I could just tell, she was just eager. And I thought, why haven't you told me? And yet my mother-in-law, I would ask her, and she'd say, oh no, you do everything well. So that's, I just thought, I think it's very wise of us as women to look at the people we admire and then adopt those things. I think that's the way that we're supposed to grow and learn and to be mature. But I thought she was a wonderful grandmother. My mother was a great, wonderful mother to me as a mother myself, the way that she, only if it was asked. But I did ask. I did want to know. So I did a lot of asking. Anyway, during this, I just listened to the conversation. And then so let me just tell you, it was an incident that happened, and it happened so many times. I thought, oh my goodness, this is just, it is something I think that's happening in families with children, because they don't take the time to explain it to the children, what's going on, why this behavior isn't good, what they should change, and the consequences if they continue, that sort of thing. So the incident happened is that every time I was able to, I was driving with them whenever we went anywhere. This family invited me so that their teenage daughter could ride with my granddaughter. Okay, so I was in exchange. So I was able, they gave me the front seat, the seat of honor, and I was sitting in the front seat. And then they have a younger boy, I don't know, 10, 11, maybe he's 12. I have no idea. Anyway, but he was behind. Every time when we got somewhere and we'd stop, he'd open his door and hit the car right next to us. And it didn't happen just the one time. And it was with force, like he was eager to jump out. And one of them, it actually hit, I have yet to talk to her, hit I thought I would go down and look and see if I see any damage. My friend's car, a friend of mine, yes, and hit her car. It was not me I did notice it, but it was my son who said, isn't that your friend's car? I saw her, and I said, I think it was. But anyway, what would happen is as soon as he'd open it, they would both yell because it is a jarring thing. And I don't think parents need to apologize. And I would say, don't apologize for yelling, which is one of the first things that they did. They felt they were in the wrong for overreacting. I don't think it's an overreaction at all. And I think it's part of life, and it's a part of, and later on, if they do, then take it another time and have that be a totally separate topic, because if not, you miss the opportunity to correct the child who's they're in the wrong. They were the actor and they're the reaction, right? So let's take care of first things first. So, but they didn't. They yelled. He yelled back. And then it went on to, they kept saying, I'm sorry, it's okay, coddling as if what their overreaction or him feeling badly that he hit the car, which he wasn't feeling badly, was the big offense. And I was just baffled by it, and that it kept repeating because it was dealt with in the same way every single time. And it happened at least 4 times, because and it could have been more than that. So it's just a crazy. So how would you respond to that? And so I'm not going to ask you, it's not a quiz, but I just want to say now, even though it's unsolicited advice, I'm not speaking to you directly, so it's okay for me to just share as an older wise woman. And had it been with me, and I know I would have reacted the same way with my children. I would have, if it was all the kids, if it was a visitor, if we had visitors with, I would ask, if you just excuse us for a bit, they get it, why? And I would have excused myself and left, so that the parents, or if it was just the mother, could talk to this behavior and explain, first of all, that is, you damage the property of someone else. That is their property. You wouldn't want, and if they don't get it, explain, whatever it's important of theirs that you wouldn't want it damaged. And because of this, we need to leave and show responsibility as the adult and give that opportunity to, we're going to have to leave a note. I'm going to put my phone number here. When they call, you will be the one talking. And I wouldn't care if it was a 4, 5, 6-year-old. And my children will attest to it. I'm not just saying it, because they each had to do it. And interestingly, they only had to do it once, because they knew that they would be responsible. I did not speak for them. And always the other person, whether it was when when, like, I'm thinking about my youngest, when she stole something from the store, and had to bring it back to the manager and say, I stole this from the store. I let them do it, even though she was so young, and they were just endeared to it. Of course, they were so kind and caring, and they respected me as the mother. And and my children do the same thing. That's the thing. They've taken that as far as they can. Sometimes when you're married to someone else and they don't agree with that, you have to balance that out. However, that would be the way to do that. And then, but since this is repeated, but I believe that that had been the way they had handled it the first time, and also to say, just so you don't forget, we're going to put the child lock on it. It was my son, my son who said, they have child locks. Why didn't they just put the child, he was like frantic, because he knows the child lock should have been put on the thing. Anyway, saying about that, but even once they unlocked it, he could have thrown it out, maybe a reminder. But if it happened again, then I think that what I would do in those situations is explain to him, well, here's the thing. You've shown that you're still very much a child. Children
Yeah.
don't want to be children, even if they're a child. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
they don't want
Mm.
you to, when you treat them, to say you have, if you call a child and they don't come, I would go and take their hand and walk them. And I would start walking around holding their hand everywhere. They don't like that. And then I'd say, I don't have to hold your hand. If when I call you, you come. When I
Mm.
call your name, you have to come. And if you do that, I don't have to hold your hand. I have to
Mm.
hold it sometimes when it's not safe in the street, but you just have to come. They don't want their hand held. I'm just telling you, know, right? You can just feel their
Mm.
little hands trying to get
Yeah.
away. I don't let it go, you know, and I'm not mean. I don't have to yell. But
Mm.
I'm stronger and they're not getting away. And it's for
Mm.
their safety ultimately,
Yeah.
because if children don't come when they're called and there's a car coming or there's danger, you want to make sure that they're going to come when they're called. That's my 2-year-old, you know, younger than
Mm.
that, it doesn't work, but my 2, they learn that. And it was survival when you have a big family. Anyway, getting
Mm.
back to this, but explaining that since you're a child, we'll treat you like a child. That means that we will not
Mm.
unlock your door. We'll come around and get you out of your car seat. You don't have to unbuckle. They don't want any of that, you know, but
Yes.
really bring it down. This is what a child, if you're going to act like a child in this, then you can't have the responsibility of opening your door, and we'll help you get out and, you know, protect the car next to us, because that's what we need to do as a responsible adult and responsible parents. We need to teach you that. And it wouldn't go on. And not only would it not go on that time, that reminder would carry through for lots of incidences afterwards, unless the
Yes.
child is just thick. And that can be, you know, I have no idea if this little boy's like, I have no idea, you know? I mean, there were other incidences that happened. I thought, my gosh, what is going on? But I just think that it was a lack of taking time to train, to
Mm.
teach, to
Yes.
discipline, to
Mm.
have consequences. You have to have consequences. When you remove
Mm.
consequences, I mean, we've seen that in the United States recently, you know, that they've
Yes.
removed the consequences and crime goes up. And thankfully,
Mm.
things are changing, and the crime is, even just the knowing that it's happening. It's like when dad comes home, right? If
Yes.
if he's that way, I enjoyed my 2 of my granddaughters yesterday, and normally I don't, uh, you know, do any video chatting when daddy's home, but
Mm.
my daughter-in-law said, "Oh, please do," you know, and so I did. Actually, they called me, and but I noticed that the children, and I even commented to my son today, they were so calm. I don't know if that's, I have no idea, but I think it's because twice, only twice, and he never once, I just think, oh, you know, Lord, you are so good, because watching him as the incredible father that he is, he just
Mm.
said, no, girls, no, don't do that. And that's it. That's it.
Yes. Yes.
No,
Done.
you know? And then
Yes.
the other, you know, and then he just said one other thing. No, you need, remember I said about you need to share, it's her turn. And that was it. And then they were switching back and forth. It's your turn. Oh, isn't it your turn? Has it been my 5 minutes? You know, and they were just doing that. But I know he never threatened. He never raised his
Yes.
voice,
Mm.
nothing. It was just, this is the way. There's just a stability. And there's
Mm.
such a calmness. And even when he's around his children, that if they sit in his lap, if they don't feel well, he comforts them. There's that security. Do you know when
Mm.
you feel that? And
Yes.
that's what we feel from having a heavenly father, don't you think? That there's this
Yes.
calmness
Mhm.
in things, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, it should be both parents, that there's a calmness that even though I might be out of control, and we feel that even as adults, right? You're like, oh, we just need, you know, sometimes we need Heavenly Father, we need, you know, a husband to say, just relax, you know, I've got this.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
we need that, and they need that in their lives. And to not give that, people
Mm.
worry about, oh, I want to make more money and I want to give these things that ultimately destroy them,
Mm.
all these things and these gadgets and these toys, and those are the most miserable children. So if you can't give those things to your children, you should be thanking God that you can't, And don't if
Yes.
you can't afford it. You shouldn't be doing that, because think of them as adults. That's where they think that their gratification and happiness, and it's such short-lived, what they need
Yes.
is you and your time and the simple things, and just love and caring and caring and that stability. But having adults that are calm and caring, care enough. I care about how you're going to grow up. I care about how you're going to interact with your siblings or classmates if they're in school.
Yes.
Whatever it is you have to give that. You have to invest that in your children. And it wouldn't take that much time. And to wait for them to, when I wouldn't be there, you need to not embarrass the child there. I don't like
Oh.
when when
Mm.
parents discipline their children in front of others. I think it's
Mm.
disrespectful.
Yes.
I mean, you respect each other. I mean, I'm not, now sometimes children get more respect than they deserve. They don't get respect from their children, but they give the respect they deserve. That's totally
Yes.
out of whack. But I think there needs to be a mutual respect and love and admiration. You treat others as you want them to be treated. Isn't that what he says? He doesn't
Yes.
say at what age or whatever. We're
Mm.
just supposed to be kind and caring and loving to everyone.
Mm.
But training your children in that, disciplining your children, I think
Mm.
it comes a long, long way. And I was just so keen to share that, because I thought this is a great opportunity. And it hopefully will just pop into your heads when you have a situation like this, and to just do it wisely,
Yes.
because I did. It wasn't that I knew how to handle it right then. I would have at the time, I know, because I just loved being a mother, and I would have done something similar. But on top of it, sitting, with my husband and talking about it, and then getting a chance to talk about it with both my sons, and my granddaughter, just those kinds of things, because they witnessed that. And so I thought,
Mm.
I'm just going to share this, because hopefully it's something that'll make them think, and they'll use it in their life. That's what I want to pass on. That's the inheritance. Yes, maybe
Yes.
money, maybe a farm, again, but the inheritance I want to pass on is first love. Love
Yes.
covers a multitude. Love never
Mm.
fails. Knowing, feeling,
Mm.
sensing how much I love them. And
Mm.
love comes with
With
caring
that.
enough to be the adult, to be the grandmother. I don't give into things with my grandchildren. I explain, that came up too. Can I interject this? Because since it
Yes,
came up,
please.
is that
Yes.
I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was saying something about it was my oldest, because he helped to train me to be, because now it's a new role for me as a grandmother. And he would say, well, Nana does this or Nana does that. And I said, yeah, I'm Mimi. I'm not Nana. I said, you're going to know that. And I said, and if you have any question, talk to your dad. He understands, I'm not that, I don't do that. But at the same token, it's not, but I found that I was more generous and more loving, I'm just a lot. I know that surprises both of you, the listeners, but I'm a lot. So I'm a lot of strong discipline, training, teaching, but I'm love, love, love. My mother was like that. She didn't do the discipline as much, though.
Mm.
She was perfect, but she didn't do that so much. There were a lot of my siblings that got away with a lot of things, but I mean, I'm not here. It was good for me to see, because I thought, well, when I'm a mother, I'm not going to let them
Yes.
do that, I will not let them go and pout. I will not let them roll their eyes. I'm just like, I'm not going to let them do that. And I didn't. And the nice thing is that they have that respect for everyone, for respect for authority and things. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking and get your input, because you probably have different situations, or maybe you'll question something like, what are you talking about, or whatever. I'll just leave it to both of you.
Yes. So something that you mentioned, and Adina, I want you to add to this, something that you've mentioned is that you spoke about love, right? And in that moment when you need to discipline your child, I think if you have like the idea in your head that you're training them to become good adults, you know, the best
Mm-hmm.
word you
Mm.
used was the best adults they can be. And I just loved what you said there, because sometimes in that moment, you don't always, honestly, you don't always have the energy to discipline your children, you know, because
That's,
you're like,
oh,
I want
yes.
to do this, you know, or you feel bad for them because of a situation that they're in or whatever, you know. And especially when, like me, can I just say in my case, like being a divorced mother, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I want to give my children the best of everything, but I shouldn't distort it in my head saying that the best would be to just let them do what they want, because that
No.
won't be the best
Mm-hmm.
for them. That won't be love. And that won't be helping them to become the best adults that they can be.
Yes, yes. And
And that's,
because
Mm.
it's
I
just
love
kind
when
of
you
a
said
lot
that.
having to do with marriage, not just
Yes.
adults, I think that even, I don't know why, but I thought of that first because that, well, the two become one. So
Mm,
how they become one, of course it's in choosing them, but whatever. But
mm,
in that is, are you a good husband? Are you good? I mean, it starts with being a good person, a good
mm.
child, that, until they grow.
Yes.
But I always was thinking about that. How is that going to work if they act like this
Mm,
or they lack this when they are married? Because that union, I mean, it used to be, oh, if people made it 50 years, it was a big thing. Now you hear 60 and 70 years that they're
yes.
married in that.
Yeah.
And so it's imperative that that relationship, and this is what this is talking about, is always interacting, and how you behave is going to affect that key relationship, which
Mm,
is that. And of course, then that flourishes
mm.
into them as a couple and having children and that relationship. So it is just important. And oh my gosh, being tired. I mean, you're talking about
Mm.
really
Yes.
because of having, I mean, come on. I mean, now it's really rare to have had 7 children. And
Yes.
so having the children, having all the ages, having babies, nursing
Mm,
babies, that sort of thing, and just being tired. But it's what you do. You want to invest in their future. That's what I thought. I would think of,
yeah.
I heard a scenario, and I don't know if it's anywhere, but that they used it that with that it is making a deposit into their bank, so
Oh,
we
I like.
understand about that. So when
Mm,
I invest in my child
mm,
in that, and I'm going to be investing into that child and doing these things, is I am tired, but I'm willing to invest that into their bank account. Back in the
yes.
days, back when I was younger, we used to have, the children were given a little bank account, and you'd write down, I'm going to deposit $2, in my
Yes.
Mm.
savings, and you'd write it and they'd put it in, and that sort of thing. And so I kind of picture that back at the time when we used to have to,
Mm.
balance our checkbooks. Oh, I'm terrible at that. Oh my gosh. My former
Mm.
husband just lost it when he was turning over the finances, and I couldn't
Mm,
balance the checkbook. But here's the thing about a child. If you're always making deposits and you don't make withdrawals, and I think a withdrawal, you know, is when
yeah.
you lose it, or you belittle them, or you say
Yes.
you're like your father, or any of those unkind things. That's a
Mm,
huge withdrawal, to the
yes.
point that some children are bankrupt.
Mm,
They're
yeah.
bankrupt. And those are the ones who are so needy, and they'll ask anybody, look at me, look at me, look at me, that sort of thing, because they're just desperate, and they act out, and some act out unbecomingly because it's the only time you pay attention to them. And of
Yes.
course,
Yes.
we know phones are a bad thing right now. You need to put them away because you're distracted. Turn
Mm,
them off, have certain times to do that, but be in the moment, be present with
yes.
the children. I don't know. It would be so difficult to be a mother now. I would just turn it off. I know, I used to do, like, people would say, oh, she's at home all the time. Yeah, I'm not just at home. I've got
Yes.
I'm homeschooling. I've got babies, and we have a home business. I'm not just home, and I don't take calls. in,
Yes.
only rarely in emergency would I take calls. I wouldn't talk to them. So again, I wouldn't have been on, but it's just throwing that out there to keep in mind, but to invest that into your child. And I think too, because we all make mistakes like this, being upset and yelling at this child later on though. Okay. So there is a withdrawal, because you get yelled at, maybe, I don't know, maybe
Yes.
really losing it, so whack them or
Yeah.
something. I don't know, I mean, something, I don't know. Let's just say. But if you do that, the thing that's incredible is that later on, you can take that child and say, I wanted to apologize. If this has nothing to do with what you did, that's an action, but the way I
Yes.
reacted, and I don't want to make excuses, but I want you to know I just love you so much. It comes with, we have that one bullying coming, and I did get an opportunity to go back and to not only make it right, but to double the blessing. Like, it's like you withdrew, let's say
Yes.
500,000 US dollars. That's a lot of money, right?
What?
But instead you put $1 million back in.
Yes.
Because there was this, well, it was my daughter-in-law who said that. My gosh, I saw that and I was just in awe of your humility and the kindness, and she came away just glowing from that. Do you see? So those mistakes, it says God caused all things to work together for good if we love God and are called according to his purpose. So if you lose it, I would go to my husband or my father, say, help, how do I make this right? Because I can't. And he'll give you the wisdom to be able to say, go to them, and, and he'll just take over. He might not prepare, but you just know, and you go, and you just trust that he's going to make that an opportunity. And then you can deposit. So you withdrew 500,000 and you deposit $1 million. And so you're up another, like that kind of stuff. But if you think about that in that investment, and is it, you do not have time to invest that into their future, because they can draw upon that their whole lives.
Yes.
Their whole lives. And you can't make up for what's going on with the other families when you're divorced. There's maybe a lot of withdrawals in that child's life, and it's not your job, nor could you ever make up for that. But you can just be the best mother that you can be to that child, and be that example, and invest that into them, and train them and things. Both of you have wonderful children. I already know them, not like we hang out together because you're in Africa and I'm in the United States. However, I do know that you are wonderful, mothers, and you have that love, and you give your children that love. And now this is just some wisdom that so you can enjoy your children more, and also not be worried, or I'm not a good mother or something. If you ever feel like that, I mean, talk to your father. That's who I would go to. If my father was alive, you would go to your father and ask him certain things like that. Sometimes you ask a husband, or your best friend. And so he could be all those things, because I don't think you could really enjoy your children and love being a parent without parenting with him or like him. And that's the other thing. The Bible's full of how he treats us as his, God's children. I use that quite a bit. But anyway, I'm going to leave that in there. And if we get to that bullying, we can do that, or I can hold it off to that. But I'll let you take over on where we are now.
Yes, thank you. So Adina, I just want you to add to what Erin said about, depositing into their bank account. Let me say it like that, because it's a nice shift to think about it that way, that you train your children to grow up to be the best adults they can be. I think we need to put that somewhere, because it was so beautifully said. Adina, what do you have to share with us?
Yeah, for me, I also, when my children, it's rarely, I must say, my children, the older they get, it's getting easier. But I like to explain the consequences of their actions, not just, okay, you did this, so you're gonna get a hiding or go sit in the peanut gallery. But I mean, in real life, with that acting, whatever they did, what consequences it can have in life, or if you mistreat someone, you know, how will you feel when someone do whatever you just did now? How would you feel if someone, you know, so yeah, that's how I like to train my children. It's to know what the consequences can be in real life when they maybe go up, become adults, you know, what the consequences of certain deeds will be. When I just got divorced, you know, you want to feel guilty, and then you want
Yes.
to spoil your children, and you don't want to take the discipline on you because, you know, you want to try and make up for the situation. But I've quickly learned that doesn't work like that. I mean, I still have to take responsibility for their disciplining and teaching them and training them. I can't just now, because I feel guilty because of the divorce, just spoil them rotten and allow them to just do whatever they want, you know. I still have to take that responsibility to train them, which I always did, but it was just, like I said, after the divorce. But yeah, so that's basically what I can add.
I think
Yeah,
a good
so
balance too, you were saying about you don't want to spoil them, you don't, and you have to kind of train them. But I think the hardest part, I mean, I know this is a whole other topic, is the balance, because definitely a man who leaves, cheats, runs off, there's so much guilt there, whether they want to, but so they make it up for, I'm not around, so I'm going to buy them these things. And then you try and balance it out by, I've got to be stricter. And then you become not the fun mom. You even have that in your book, which I love, because you didn't necessarily, nothing against you, but just watching the way that the Lord orchestrated it. So you could become that fun mom. I had the same thing. I got to do that. I became, because I think it's a natural thing. It's a responsibility. Mothers are the ones who tend to train. Fathers go out, work, that sort of thing. But when it gets out of balance, and then we try to balance by being more of the opposite to balance it, that's when we suffer. They see things out of balance, right? We try and balance it and we can't. So just in ourselves as the mother, balancing it. Here's the discipline stuff, but yeah, make sure that you have fun. And all of us come down on one side or the other. I think most mothers tend to be more responsible than less. And the dads tend to be the, you know, that other. But I think it is really important. And if you're out of balance, again, just go to him and say, I'm out of balance. I think I'm out of balance. And if I am, help me, because I can't do it, and let him do it, because he'll do a much better job. But I mean, there's no question. He'll just orchestrate it. And sometimes you have to wait a little bit, but just keep asking. And then all of a sudden you'll go, oh my gosh, look at how wonderful that is. But yeah.
And what I found is that, because, you know, I've got a pre-meeting him, because I wasn't a Christian. So for me, you know, there's a definite line in my life, right? There's a pre-knowing him and a post-knowing him, right? And I could definitely see the difference in my mothering in that, because I had the teachings of RMI, but I didn't go through all the teachings like in the first year, right? So I went through Wise Woman, Restore Your Marriage, and all of that. But having more of him, it sort of came naturally, you know.
Exactly. The other is the
naturally.
head knowledge, don't you think? It's the head knowledge. But the
Yeah.
other, it starts to come straight from the heart, and it just comes naturally because of who you're with. And it just becomes effortless, right? Doesn't it
Yes.
just become effortless and enjoyable where you're trying so hard? That's why, like in the, the people who are on the restoration journey, I just want them so quickly get off of that journey and take the fork in the road and become instead the abundant life journey. It's so wonderful. I just can't tell you. But hey, we all started out. I think that unless you are actually you come from this horrible situation, you're on your restoration journey, you find peace, you feel more stable, everything's going, but it's not easy. But but you're going to appreciate the abundant life journey so much more when you've been in that situation, right? He keeps us in those uncomfortable situations longer than we need to be, so that when we're in the new, well, it's like them leaving Egypt, let my people go. He could have turned the heart early on, right? But he needed them to leave with hopefully not wanting to go back. Even then they wanted to go back, but anyway, but they left with so much more because of having to be that. But it was not just for them, it's for us to see that. So I think in that, so I think it's in some ways, I'm sure you think, oh, if I had only been the whole time. I think you've even said that before, if I was a mother like that. But I think for your children and for all of us, I think there's a beauty to that, because you can see the before and after. You can see the contrast. That's what Proverbs is all about. That's where we learn the most, right? So it is that way. And for me, I knew a lot of things coming in because I wanted it so much, and I watched all my siblings having their children and, mentally taking notes of what I wanted. But the more that, and of course I had my best friend, so there was discussions there. So it wasn't like the before and after. However, it's the more I become, the more time I spend, the more wisdom when I really ask and watch it, the better it keeps getting better, which is what you'll have, all the way through and into being a grandmother and things. And it's a wonderful thing. But I think your children, rather than it being a negative, I think you can see it as a positive, because they see that before and after, and the gratitude for it, and them seeing that, and who knows how they might use it, especially if you point it out and sharing that with them. I think those are the kinds of conversations that you can share. And I know you both have those kind of conversations that I wondered about that, and I was concerned about it. But in this podcast, we were talking about that you should benefit. They should benefit from that. You want them to. It should be an act of benefiting, and that's something that you can invest in your children, wanting that for them. That came up too, because we're talking about divorce and separation, and wanting things for your children to have everything and not have that jealousy because they're giving it and I want to give it, or I want to have that time. That we're human, and so we're sinners, that's just our nature. But immediately coming to, but I want them to have everything. And if they're that other woman, is not unkind, but giving this, then wonderful. If she wants to do this, wonderful. Her family wants to do it, wonderful. My children are getting that. And it was something that my youngest son said, is we agreed, and it just kind of shined a light even more. My God shall supply all your needs, meaning that's coming from him. Do you know, we use it for, when we need something, my God shall supply all my needs, right? We're like, that's the assurance. Yeah, I don't need to worry. He's going to provide for our needs. So it's that way is the way we mostly, but now this is a different way of looking at it, is that any money, any of our needs that are met, it's coming from him. It doesn't matter who it comes from, because he already says, my God shall supply all your needs. So he either is the one supplying or he's not. And when he does it, there's a gratitude towards them. It's not, and it doesn't mean, because, well, that's not really from you, even though you gave me this money, it's really from God. You don't have that attitude. You're grateful if somebody uses it. You have that. I think you have a graciousness because you do understand where it's coming from and how God used that. But I think remembering that all those needs. So if it's coming from the other woman or this family or this people, or they're mean, and you should say, don't take that away from your children, and it is naturally going to come out. We are human. I think that's when that false guilt comes, and the enemy tries to make you feel like you're a bad person, and you should be ashamed of yourself. If he can't control your behavior, he's going to make you feel badly for just being human, and just saying, no, I don't want to be like that. And the quicker you can shift over, the better. I say that from experience. You don't want to be that, but it is, if you do have those feelings, they're natural, so it's okay. Just switch over to the supernatural, which is being with him.
Yes, and something that I want to ask your wisdom on. So I believe it's never too late to start training and disciplining your child, right? But what I saw from my own experience, and I'm saying this now, and it was just him, because it wouldn't have been that way if it wasn't for him, is the fact that when I went through my divorce, of course, your finances are ruined, right? And you can't give your children everything that you want to give them, that guilt makes you want to give them. So we didn't have the finances that I could give them that. And they had that at their dad's place, but not with me, right? But I'm glad, like you said, I'm glad that that was the way, because he used it for good, so that the children could, it was such a happy time for us, even though we didn't have a lot, right? But I could discipline them, and I could train them, and I could help them through those years. Whereas when they were with their dad and their stepbrother, he got everything that he desired from, because of the guilt as well, because there's guilt on both sides. And so I can see the consequences of that coming out now when the children are teenagers. Like my children, I think Adina mentioned that she doesn't need to discipline her children as much anymore, because she did the training when they were young, right? So now I don't have to. There are still times where I have to sit them down and, just say something to them, but I almost never have to say, stop doing that, don't do that. It doesn't happen anymore, because
exactly, because you've invested that into them.
Exactly, right? So, but that's not the case. And I don't want to say anything negative about anyone, but it's the truth, That's not the case at the moment with their stepbrother, because he's really having a difficult time trying to adjust. And the rules being adjusted now because he's older. And now he doesn't really know, because he's like sort of confused. I think confused is the right word, right? So if there's any wisdom that you can share regarding that, I don't think it's ever too late to discipline or train your child. Right? But when you start earlier, it's better.
Yeah. And I think this comes from this is the time too that you can humble yourself and explain, I didn't know these things. I'm just being made aware. I neglected it. It's not that we loved you then and we don't love you now. On the contrary, we're seeing we didn't prove our love, giving into all these things, letting you have your way, letting you act like this is doing you such a disservice. It doesn't show love. But we're doing this, and it might not feel like that, but here's what we're looking towards is when you're grown up and you're an adult, because if these attitudes or this behavior doesn't change when you're adult, you'll be miserable, and there's nothing we can do about it. Our responsibility is to train you and discipline you. And you know what I think is the word that we should use is correct them,
Correct.
And they do the wrong thing,
Yes.
that we have to correct your behavior, and that's to get it back on track so that you can be successful in life, because this isn't the way, I don't know, the CEO of a company or what, I don't know how to, it would depend on the child, where they were coming from, but that isn't, or even just thinking like a girl, like maybe like my granddaughters, I would say, if you act like this when you're married, can you imagine how that would be? you'd be miserable, and you wouldn't stay married, and you wouldn't, wouldn't have a happy life. But these are the people that are happy. The people that get their own way are the most miserable. And we've not only made you miserable, we've made us miserable. Everyone around you are miserable. And that's why we care. And so if we all work together at this, we could do this much quicker. I think them understanding, I mean, it depends on how far gone the child is, I mean, some of it would just need some, I don't know, boot camp behavior, which I share and say, where it's like you have to, in boot camp, at least, I don't know, I'm sure it's in all countries, when they bring them in, they just kind of, they're overly strict and really lay down the law, and they kind of break down that pride that they have and their autonomy. And you're like, no, you have no rights now. Sometimes you have to do that just to kind of correct the whole, if it's really far gone, you're not going to be able to pull it slowly over. It has to do. And God does that with us, with an illness or a broken relationship, he said, that's it. We're done. I've got your attention, and you're kind of a broken person. That's what he does. He's our Heavenly Father. He does that sort of thing. So following suit. And I think always going to the Father, think of him as a grandfather, this wise grandfather who's raised all these generations, the Creator, and ask, what should I do? I've messed up in that. And I don't think that it is wrong to say, I don't think making it a habit, that, oh, I've done wrong, and you're constantly confessing to your child. That is not, that is not good. It should not be expected. But in those situations, and not taking on or minimizing anything that brought this about. But I just think being an honest, and I just think talking, I always talk to my children in the same vocabulary so that they had great vocabulary. Again, my children have followed suit. And so when I hear my grandchildren speak, I think, do they even know what that word is? I'm not sure. Have to look it up. What is it? I'm like, but I know that their parents use that word, and they speak intelligently, not baby talk or whatever, So I think that there's a lot more in that, and just being able to talk to them in that way as and understand. I mean, you have to it depends on the age and stuff, but I think you're absolutely right. It's not too late. And once it gets to the breaking point, because I mean, once there's, I don't think he's 16 now, but I mean, what is this behavior going to mean as far as they'll be in jail? They'll be criminals. There'll be, and most of them before even that, and it might be, is miserable. And misery means drug and alcohol and, immorality to cover that. And a lot of times that's the emptiness. A mother can do so much for that, and even interjecting little mothering when you meet someone, and to show that caring or whatever, when there's those opportunities. That's again, my mother, I'm bringing in my mother thing with that, because just that one little interaction, that one little talking, or that one caring can be huge for that, And and then if your children, because this is a step or a half, whatever, brother, half,
Stepbrother.
Stepbrother, right? Yeah, stepbrother. I always get confused. But anyway, with that, and they're seeing it, I think helping them to make sense of it, of that, and not that they have to. I think is important, because there'll be things that they missed out on, or they didn't do, or they have to, or as a parent or whatever. I just think there's just so much wisdom that can be shared, and it's such an investment in their future and in their lives, in their lives right now, understanding that, thinking in a higher level, more with the wisdom of Proverbs and God's ways and stuff. I think is just really, really good. And I do know both of you do that with them, but for the
Mm.
listeners to follow suit and start doing it. And again, no matter what it is, it's never too late.
Mm.
You know, sometimes
Yeah.
even when you've asked for something, when it comes, you can double that you missed
Yes.
out. There's a double blessing. That's what he says, you know, when there's injustice, right?
Yeah.
Or you've
Yes.
sinned, it says, I'll double
Mm.
that iniquity. So you can come out better, not worse.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
just have to go to him about it, right? You just have to go to him and push away
Exactly.
any kind of guilt, that false guilt. Just if you feel guilty about stuff, just talk to your husband, talk to your father, say, if I've messed up, show me. And
Yes.
you know, 99% of the time, well, maybe
Mm.
with me, 90% of the time, he says, no, you haven't. And then the other 10% says, well, you know, glad you asked. No, anyway, but but you feel good. You don't, it's never unkind or pleasant. And I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing. When we go to him, it's never mean or unkind. And that's why I am always so sad when people are falling to their face and they're pleading with God. I'm thinking, get up. You know,
Mm.
go and
Mm.
embrace him, sit with him. He loves you. He's not there. He's not a taskmaster. You're his child. You know,
Mm.
I mean, if you don't
Yes.
know him and you are an enemy, and you better get on your face and get right with him. But once
Mm.
that happens, you don't have to do that. And so if that's the way he is, then that's the way we can be as
Mm.
mothers, as parents,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Sure.
emulating him. And I think, like you said, it'll come naturally once you're
Yes.
on the abundant life journey,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
That's the way to
Yes.
enjoy your children, love being a parent. Get
Exactly.
on the
Yes.
abundant
The
life
abundant
journey,
life. I
right?
agree. Yes.
Yeah,
And
and then show you, and then your children will naturally just be on that with you, and then
Mm.
that's the way their life is going to be, right?
yes, right. Exactly.
Exciting.
There. I just want to share something funny, and then I want to go to you, Adina. So it just comes naturally, like, and I didn't even realize that I'm doing it until my son pointed it out for me. And it was, I can't remember, I quoted something from that someone said. I can't even remember what it was that I was quoting, but he didn't know the quote. And immediately he said, so that's from the Bible? And I said, no, it's not from the Bible. And my daughter says, oh, so mom actually quotes stuff that's not from the Bible. And I said, yeah, sometimes do. So they just assume that all the wisdom I give comes from the Bible.
Well,
And
that's good.
it was just funny. And it came naturally. I didn't even know that. So it's definitely reading the Psalms and Proverbs, which I really, really needed a lot. So Adina, I want to come to you and, you know, just ask you for your input on this.
Yeah, while I was listening, I was thinking back on my journey, and you know, while I was still married, you know, for discipline and stuff, I relied on my former husband. Not 100%. There was times that I was alone with my children, that I also had to discipline them, but I relied more on their father, their dad, to do the disciplining.
I think that's very common, right?
Yes.
I think that's very common, yes.
But then, you know, after the divorce, and I now you have to suddenly you have to do this on your own because there's no one else. And that's where I appreciate being on the abundant life journey and having your heavenly husband or your children's heavenly father to help you in this, because it's not always easy. And sometimes I, out of the flesh, do not know how to deal with my children. Then, you know, it's nice to know he's there. He's right there. You can just ask. You know, he's not going anywhere. You
And
can
you don't
ask.
have to leave and pray about it. Just as
Yeah.
soon as you acknowledge, you know, it says not to lean on, in all your ways, acknowledge him. And I think that acknowledging, just like that, is in the moment. You acknowledge he's right there. What am I supposed to say? You know?
Yes.
And it's just that
exactly.
acknowledgement. Oh, I'm not alone. Wait a minute. What, you know, and that pause, and then he just takes over. And, you know, and the other thing is that it's not only because, you know, like a lot of mothers, he's the
Mm.
discipline. But you have to be both, the mother and the father. And that's why it's very important to know they do have a heavenly father, and you do have a husband that you can discuss things with. Like, what should we do
Yes.
about this? And it is, what
Yes.
should we do? You're not
Yeah.
separate. What should we do about this? What, tell me what we should do about this. What, or just have it happen, or what should I do? Almost always for me, it's just like, I'll take care of it. And then somehow it just kind of goes. And sometimes I'm involved in that, taking care of it. But a lot of times I'm not. Isn't that a wonderful thing that you don't have to do anything? You don't have to
Yes.
say anything. You don't have to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's just a great thing. And I think the more you practice that daily from just anything, what are we going to eat? What the groceries? I have no clue. I haven't had time to make the
Yeah.
grocery list or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I was running
Yeah.
out of food yesterday. I was even saying, because I know we've brought up this thing about having this morning communion, which is not like the religious ritual, but anyway, I always
Yes.
have this lovely little communion, because like communing with nature. Do like
Yeah.
people get out and they commune with, and there's this awareness and there's peacefulness. I think that's what communion should be. I mean, I know they have
Yes.
this religious thing, but anyway, I didn't have my normal treat that my husband always gives me. And I'm like, hey, all day, remember, I have nothing. There's nothing in here. There's nothing for tomorrow. You pay attention. I even told my son, I have nothing. I don't know. Because I told him about this communion thing. He goes, oh, I love that,
Yeah.
So anyway, and would you believe, of course, I didn't have to do anything other than to just bug him about it. Remember, I don't
Yeah.
have anything.
Think
No.
about it.
And he's so patient with me, he's so patient with me. And I just love to be able to be me, it's always just a fun. But then I get a
Yeah.
call from my son, hey, I'm over here at this store where I get my favorite French pastries. And he
Yes.
called, is there anything you need there? As a matter of fact, I said, oh, ye of little faith. And he said, what? And I said, I kept thinking, I don't have any. I explained it to him after and he laughed. But and so I ended up with enough for 12 days. I'm like, it's like 12 days of
Wow.
Christmas.
Goodness.
So anyway,
Beautiful.
why did you doubt? But I didn't have to
Yeah.
do anything, except have fun about it. And now I
Yeah.
appreciate them so much more, just like you said, when we lack in things. I think people need to understand when we mess up, when we do stuff. I think to
Yes.
make this real, to not make it religious, not religious, real, just real, being the real deal. That was my second oldest son. He said, he wanted us to be real deal. I thought he was talking about me. He wasn't talking about me, but I took it to heart and I thought, I want to be real. I want to be real.
Yeah.
Warts and all, hair growing out, my chipped nails. I'm just trying to be much more real and to stop trying to be so, for my children, my grandchildren, my daughters-in-law, because if we're that way, then we impose that on other people. I just think there's a lot to that. And I think it comes with parenting too. But, someday you'll be a mother-in-law, to son-in-law, daughter-in-law, that sort of thing, since you both have both. And I think this is the time to be planning that, and that's the other thing. You want your son and daughter-in-law, son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws to love you because you train their child right and they adore them and they appreciate you. And I get that all the time. That's absolute true all the time. How good that I raised my children. And there's nothing better. But I do know, because they're appreciated and they're dearly loved. I want them to be loved by that spouse. We know what it's like to not be loved, right? And that rejection. I didn't want that for my children. I didn't want them to feel that way. And you can't change everything because not everyone's going to be faithful, that sort of thing. However, if it's by bad behavior or things that you failed to do as a mother, and I mean, nobody's perfect, but they're kind and caring and that sort of thing. I think it just goes a long way. They're clean, don't allow messy bedrooms just because it's their bedroom. It isn't their bedroom unless they pay rent. That was the rule in our house. You pay for this?
Yes.
No, you don't. Okay. So it
Yes,
can't be.
yes.
And even then I'd evict you. So you're not gonna, it's not gonna be, we're not doing that, you know? So having them being clean and kind and considerate and just that investment is just,
Yes.
there's nothing better. And the thing is you're going to enjoy being a parent right now, enjoy being a mother because it's so productive and it's so positive, right?
Yes.
It's, you know what?
Yes.
It's taking the active rather, you know, or the offense rather than the defense, letting a
Yes.
child act out, act unbecomingly, and then you're constantly having to be on the defense, or you're constantly dealing with this bad behavior that you're trying to fix and make up for. It takes way more time, way more effort. You know, you need to think about that. And just like you said, you invested in your children and now you hardly have to say anything, right? But if you didn't, just imagine how much more at their age, when they have more freedom and, you know, they could have more of an attitude because it's rampant, you know, there's an epidemic of it. Wasn't like that not long ago. I mean, you know, there's old movies, black and white, and they would never have been disrespectful to parents or anything, you know, but they picked that up from school, from universities, to be disrespectful and kind, and it just doesn't go well for life in general, no matter what relationship.
And often people, well, not often, but I would get it sometimes where people would ask me, because I'm homeschooling, don't I grow tired of the children, you know, because we're in each
funny?
You know, we're in each other's company 24 hours a day. I said, I enjoy their company. I love having them, you know.
Well,
it's like,
the thing is that you're in love with your children, you know, and when you're in love with someone, I mean, doesn't it, these people don't remember what being in love, you want to be around them all the time. Who would I rather be around? Isn't that funny? Isn't that a funny thought? I don't know that I ever got that. Do you get that too, Adina? Do people ask you? No?
I enjoy my children, especially now.
But they don't, nobody asks or questions. Maybe they think it.
No, they don't. Actually, I don't get that question at all, but just thinking
But the
if
contrary you hear about all the time. Oh, I can't wait for them to get back to school. Oh my gosh. And they say it, and they say it in front of their children. That makes me crazy. I mean, that's when I want to take that parent aside and just shake them. Do you think they're deaf? How would you like it if your husband, oh, I can't wait to get back to work. Get away from her. What in the world? What are you even thinking? My mother was so much the other way. If she ever had known about homeschooling, trust me, I would have been homeschooled. But I mean, here's the epitome is that when we did a whole summer. Oh, it killed me because I was a daddy's girl and I didn't see my father for 3 months. But she picked us up from school and we had uniforms, got in the car, traveled for 3 months all the way around the United States, up through Canada, come down. She brought us to school that morning and we put on the uniforms that we had taken off. I mean, they were clean. And we went to school like that. She didn't want to miss 1 minute spending time with us. Yes. And she'd always let us off for our birthdays too. I'm just putting it out there. There's some parents that they have to go, but I have to say, I love my mother because she would never, she would always have a, you know, unless we wanted to, because sometimes there's a party or something like that because it's your birthday. But she said, oh, I just want to spend the whole day with you. What should we do? And we'd hide on the floorboard when we pull up and drop the other child off, you know. She said, just stay down there, just stay down there. And you just feel so special, you know. So we singled out, we homeschooled, so you can't, like that. But we would always take them out, just one, you know, to single them out, because when you have a big family, it is hard to get that time. And so they did get it once a year. They get at least once a year, that time alone. With the parents, because we just adore them. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going off from one thing to another, but you can tell this is my favorite topic
Yes.
mothering and children. And I just adore the children. And it's just, oh, and I just feel so sad for children who are going to miss this, listening to my son who has twin baby girls, and the way he just goes on and
Yeah.
about it, and just the delight he has in being a father. And I think, and there's some that think they don't want this.
Mm,
It's the most, and anybody who's not had and then they have it, they're like, oh my
mm.
gosh, the love that
Yes.
I feel, and
Yeah.
for this
Mm,
child, there's nothing like it, it's just so wonderful. And so how we can influence the next generation, I think that's another thing about enjoying your children.
mm.
If you show how wonderful it is, even
Yeah.
though they may still be thinking at some point, they're going to think, hey, I'm not going to miss out on this,
Yes.
it's been the
Yeah.
best part of my life. Or people who
Mm.
didn't know they had a child and then they have it, and the delight that it brings, it's
Yes.
just a
So
wonderful thing.
I want to share, I think I've shared this story before, but I just want to share it again. There was this captain. So when I was working in the South African police, there was this captain, but he was like close to retiring. And when he was younger, and he was working and he was traveling all over the world because he was protecting the president, the big VIPs from our
Mm,
country. So he has set foot on almost every country and continent. He's seen the whole world. And there was this one day where we sat together, and it wasn't long before, before he retired. And I asked him this one day, I said, and Captain, you've seen the whole world. It must have been such a pleasure for you. And he said, you know what? At the time, I thought so. But now that I'm looking back, and I've got my grandchildren, and I spent so much time with my grandchildren, I realize how much time I've missed with my children. Said
mm,
even now that they're grown and we spend more time together, when they need something, when they need advice, they go to their mother because I was never around. And
mm,
he said, I'm reaping the consequences of that now because I don't have the relationship. I'm fixing it with my grandchildren, but I don't have the relationship with my children. And he said, all the money in the world isn't worth it for that. He
mm.
said, I'll trade anything to go back and change.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes. So I
Yeah,
always remember that story, right? It's
yeah,
always stuck in my head that he's seen the whole world, he's seen everything, but he traded in an instant for more time with his children. And I
yeah,
don't want to look back and have to say that.
yeah,
So his story really touched my heart. And when I heard that, I said, I don't want to look back and say I wanted to spend more time with my children. I
mm-hmm,
want to look back and say, wow, we've done all of this, and not in and it couldn't be anything big, right? Just us sitting on the bed, drinking a cup of
mm-hmm,
coffee in the morning
mm-hmm.
and chatting. The children
Yes.
enjoys that so much. It's like their best time with me is in the morning, just
Mm-hmm.
having a nice cup of coffee and talking to each other. And it doesn't have to be anything expensive, anything that costs you anything
Mm-mm.
except time. So
And
I
those
just
are the things that they're going to remember the most fondly of. And I think, having those times and making those times. I know just this a couple days ago, my granddaughter came over and I said, I'm just too tired. Hop in bed. I just hop on the bed. And she made it a point to say to her dad, guess what? When I came over, she said, and it was so wonderful. And we just got cozy on the bed. And I thought, oh, those are the memories I want her to have when I'm gone. But I'm writing this chapter. The more that I've been, and I think it's because I've been doing a lot of the salvation stories, and it always
yeah.
ends with being an epistle read by all men. And that has to do with salvation, which always plays a part because there's so many unsaved, but family, friends, people. But those are chapters in our lives. Or when my grandchildren talk about, oh, I'm going to be sad when you're not here. And I said, but we have all these chapters. They're like a chapter, like, I want them to read a lot. So you can read this chapter over and over, and your favorite chapters you can read when we did this, and you can just be there and remember everything, that went on. But these are these wonderful experiences like that, and it's this times, and we have them in our own lives, right? With your parents or grandparents or different things, and you open to that chapter again in your life, and you think about it and think about different parts of it too. But you're right, just those times to just snuggle in bed, or even the times of adversity, don't you think?
Yes.
Those times, some of those
Mm.
times when, because we've been to Disney so many times, because my family, my granddaughter now says, my favorite, I tell all my friends my great grandfather was friends with Walt Disney. And I think, oh, my mother would love that. My dad would be amused by it, but my mother would really love it. But anyway, I think the times when we all just, everybody chimed in as, oh my gosh, remember when we came to Epcot and it was pouring rain, and it was up to our ankles. It was miserable that day. It was just such misery, but we had so much fun. And it's funny that we talk about coming through that. So I think that's another very important thing, is how we react to those times of adversity and difficulty and make it wonderful, like that.
Yeah.
Because I think that helps. What better gift, or how could we invest in our children's life if they could just not just look back on it, but during that time of adversity, just really enjoy it and find good in it, and come through it. Don't you think that's because there's so much adversity, and people are just shattered by it these days, if it's not because everything comes so easily, and there's so much affluency, and children are, and then they're missing out on understanding that and coming through that. And it changes you to be tougher, more resilient. But what about the fun of it, and to just enjoy that, and to look back and to laugh about it? And or the times when we talk about, because we lived on a hill, like, so many times, remember when we couldn't get our van to get up the hill? We had to we kept sliding back down because it was dirt. It was a dirt road, and we would slide and stuff, and we'd get to the bottom, and we would just laugh, and we'd have to stop laughing, and then really like that. And we're going to shift all the weight to the front, we're going to shift it to the back. What are we going to do to get this thing up the hill? And do you know what it was? I'll just say, we started, one of them remembered when Daddy was gone. They didn't say that. And our car broke down, and we had to get home. Do you remember we sang praise music?
Yes, I remember that.
And it was slow going. We couldn't go over just a few miles an hour, but we made it home. And so we said, let's do that. And so when will we sing, And so we started singing, and you do know that we got up the hill that time. And everybody was cheering and jumping up and just thrilled, But it's something that they remember so much. And of course, they're going to draw upon it, and tell the story to their children, I think that's really important. I get another gift to give the children. But how boring if you didn't have children, right? Or if you didn't enjoy your children, or they were a burden. Children are being told, everybody's saying they're such a burden, and send them to school. And I can't wait till they grow up, or I can't wait till they walk, or I can't wait till they, all this. I can't wait to, what are you doing? You're not appreciating this. It says children are a gift, the greatest gift from God, and the best thing that you can give back to him. Because he says to be fruitful and multiply. Sorry, I'm going to just have to put my 2 cents in there, I still think that way, I mean, I would have had more children if he just blessed me with more, but he said, enough is enough. 7 is enough. Enough is enough.
Anyway. Thank you so much. Ladies, our time is up. Adina, I'm going to ask you to end this podcast for us today. And then next time we'll see, we were supposed to be talking about bullying, but I don't think we'll make a fast a rule for what we're going to talk about, and just lead, so let's see next in our podcast and just enjoy our children and enjoy talking about them, because how much fun is that? So Adina, if you could close this podcast for us today.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that, you know, I was long ago, before my journey started, you know, I was scared to become a mother. You know, I think it was more me being scared
Yes.
than me not wanting children. But now looking back, it was the biggest blessing that I could ever receive. And yeah, there's difficult times, but like, you know, like Erin also said, you just see the good in that and you make the best of the situation that you're in. And you know, teach your children in the way they should go and love
Yes.
them and just enjoy every minute with them. That's
Yeah.
because
Thank you.
time goes so fast and then
It does.
we grow. And yeah, so just love them and enjoy them.
Thank you so much. And with that wise words, we're going to say goodbye. See you in our next podcast, ladies.
Thank you.